Hey guys, and recently we got a leak for the final specs of the Nintendo Switch 2, basically what it will be capable of, how powerful it will be, how fast it will be, a lot of different things like the CPU architecture, CPU clocks, GPU clocks, memory, a lot of different things like that I won't get into the details of, except for a couple things that I wanted to touch on. But this has caused a lot of discussion and a lot of negativity on top of the negativity that already existed. But before we get started, I wanted to mention that I have a goal to hit 30,000 subscribers before the Nintendo Switch 2 launches, so if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing, and if I hit that goal, I will give away a copy of Mario Kart World. And when I say negativity, I think some of the negativity surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2 is understandable. I would say the negativity that's just toxic, blind hate for the system, spreading misinformation, that I would say is kind of a problem, and that is where it kind of gets a little less valid. But I would say most criticism for the system is valid because the price is definitely pretty egregious. It's understandable why people are upset about that, as well as Nintendo's other decisions surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2. Some of this negativity is completely understandable, I would say. But when it comes to the specs of the Switch 2, I would say it's a little, I don't really agree with all of the criticisms behind the specs of the Switch 2. And I'm not saying this as someone who's like a fanboy who's blindly supporting everything that Nintendo does. I am very critical of a lot of aspects of the Nintendo Switch 2, and I will even get into some aspects of the hardware that I am critical of. But the thing is, the system, like with the Switch 2, the specs that we got are very similar to what we were expecting. We were expecting this system to be around the ballpark of between the PS4 Pro and the Xbox Series S. And that is what the system will be shaping up to be. Sure, in handheld mode, it will be a little weaker, and that is one of my criticisms. In handheld mode, it is a little weaker than what we were expecting. I mean, I guess it's more of there's a bit more of a gap between the power of handheld mode and docked mode, probably because they actually had to add a fan to the dock, and the dock will provide a larger boost. But even then, it's still mostly within the lines of what we were expecting. It is capable of running some games in 4K. It has DLSS upscaling. DLSS upscaling allows the games to run at a lower resolution, but then is bumped up to a higher resolution and looks good, but also runs well at the same time. This will be very beneficial for a lot of games on the Nintendo Switch 2. But just with this system being in between the PS4 Pro and Xbox Series S, I think that is perfectly acceptable and fine for a portable system in 2025. I think that is about what we were expecting, and I think that will be fine for now. And there's a lot of reasons why this is completely fine. This is basically a tablet, like the Nintendo Switch 1. It is literally a tablet. We really shouldn't expect it to have PS5 levels of power. And yeah, I know the technology in the actual system itself for the Switch 2 is technically a few years old at this point, but it's still, with the specs and how we've seen games running on the system so far, I think this is definitely fine for a new Nintendo system right now. I still think they are at a better point than they were when the Nintendo Switch launched in terms of power. I mean, I guess in other areas, you could say Nintendo was quite a lot better with the Nintendo Switch 1 launch, but in terms of just power, I think the Switch 2 is definitely a little closer to the other systems than they were before. I feel like people do exaggerate that a little bit, But I think where the Switch 2 is at, I think is fine. And the thing is, with a lot of modern games, between like the PS4 generation and the PS5, I mean, sure, there was a graphical improvement, but that jump in graphics was not as major as previous generations. You could argue about that with me or disagree with me, and that is completely fine if you do disagree, but I think at this point, we are really hitting diminishing returns on graphics. So the Nintendo Switch 2 not being quite as powerful as the PS5 and Xbox Series X, I think that is definitely acceptable for now. It really does not have to be as powerful as a PS5. I feel like the amount of effort that they would have to go through to make the system still be portable and be as powerful as a PS5, I feel like would be extremely huge. And it would be extremely expensive as well, and would not have the same form factor of the Nintendo Switch 2 here. So I definitely think it really didn't need to have the power of the PS5. I think like around the ballpark of PS4 Pro and Xbox Series S is acceptable. And from what we've seen so far, with games actually running on the system, which is really the most important part here, like actually seeing how the games will run, how third-party games will run, a lot of games actually look better than the Xbox Series S. I'm not gonna say that the system is more powerful than the Xbox Series S, because that isn't exactly true. The Xbox Series S is technically more powerful, even though the Nintendo Switch 2 does have some advantages over it. But the Nintendo Switch 2 generally looks about on par with the Series S. So that is why I really don't think the power of the Nintendo Switch 2 is an issue. I think it's mostly fine. There are a few things that I am critical of though, and that is with memory, because 3 gigabytes of memory is reserved for the system, while 9 is available for the games, and I think 3 gigabytes is a bit much, I would say. That, like, I think taking up a quarter of the system's memory for just the UI is, or just the system in general, I think that saying just the UI is kind of disingenuous, but like, reserving it that much for the system, I feel like is a bit much. I think Nintendo can do better than that. I know there's the game chat now, and I feel like that is definitely why it's such a substantial amount, but I think Nintendo could have done a little better here. It would have been nice if there was more memory available for the games. I think Nintendo could have worked on that, but I don't know. I think it is a little bit concerning that there's that much reserved for this system, and especially because the UI is so bare bones. It's like the Switch 1's UI. It's really not that interesting, and I get like a lot of comments whenever I bring that up saying, oh, it's just to optimize the speed of the UI. Like, if it was like the Wii U, it would be a lot slower. But the thing is, with this 3 gigabytes being reserved for like the system and the UI, I think they could have done better here. I think they could have made the UI more interesting if they were like so insistent on this being 3 gigabytes. I think they could have done a lot better here. They could have made it a lot more interesting, like actually add things like folders, themes, different things like that. Music in the eShop, like all those little things I think they could have made a little better and still had the actual UI still be like fast and everything. Like, I think the system, or like the UI being fast and the UI being very stylized and interesting aren't mutually exclusive. A lot of people seem to think they are mutually exclusive, but I think you can have a good looking UI. I mean, I guess it already looks good, but like something that looks interesting while also having it run well. So I think there's definitely that to keep in mind there. And just another little criticism I have is the fact that I think the system should have had 16 gigabytes of RAM rather than just 12. That would have helped with what I mentioned previously, with 3 gigabytes being used for the system. So I think that would have worked a little better, just for like more memory for the games there. But I think for the most part, I think most of the specs here are fine, I would say. And it just seems like, in general, this system will be pretty good, I would say, and is about what we were expecting for, like, the past, like, 6 to 8 months. I would say probably at this more than 6 months. I forgot we're already in May, but, like, at this point, like, just over half of a year, we've kind of been expecting this. So I don't know why people are only having an issue with it now. I think it's just a little weird at this point. It just seems like people are just finding more reasons to complain about this. I mean, I don't like to use the word complain that much because most of the time for the Switch 2, people do have valid criticisms, but I feel like the fact that so much negativity was kind of coming out now with, like, the specs being leaked and them being kind of similar to what we were expecting is just kind of weird, I would say. And I don't know, I think it's just kind of just a bit unnecessary. But yeah, anyways, let me know what your thoughts are about this down in the comments. And anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my Discord server and Blue Sky if you want to. Stay perky!